So we come to our next paper. The topic of the next paper is the hermeneutics of Quran translation in colonial Indonesia, the case of Hida yat al-Rah mān. And this paper will be presented by two authors, Muhammad Fathurrozaq, who is doctoral student in Islamic Studies at UIN Sunan Ampel in Surabaya. He has published widely on medieval interpretation of the Quran. And the second author is Muhammad Saifullah, who is lecturer in Usuluddin at the Institute of Quranic Studies, Annur in Yogyakarta. His research focuses on Quran in Indonesia and Quran, Hadith, and social media. The paper will discuss the composition of Hida yat al-Rah mān, a Japanese Quran translation produced in Dutch East Indies on the close of the 19th century. They will first elaborate on the context in which the translation emerged against the background of the Santri anti-government movement. They will also address the way that Pagon, which was previously primarily used as a medium for colonialist propaganda, was reinvented in the service of this translation, as well as the creativity of the author, who was a Hanbali, in arranging the translation. So now you have the word, you can present your presentation.
Okay, let me share our screen first.
Yes, yes.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for Johannathing, Kamran Ahan for the time. I'm Muhammad Saifullah, lecturer at Usuluddin Faculty in Institute Ilmu Al-Quran, Annur, Yogyakarta. In this session, we will talk about dakwah activities and Quran translation in colonial Indonesia, a review on Muhammad Hambali's work, Hida yat al-Rah mān. We have four main points here to discuss. The first is introduction, to show you the gap, to show you the contrast. The second is the double context of Fathurrozaq mán's context and Hida yat al-Rah mán context. And the third is about the methods of Hambali in translating the Quran. And the last is conclusion. And the first and second point, I myself will elaborate it, then the others will be explained by my partner, Muhammad Fathurrozaq. Let me begin by telling you about the gap. Our essay today discusses a Quran translation, Hida yat al-Rah mán, arranged by Muhammad Hambali, which was published in 1985. This work is a summary of Kiai Soleh Darat's work, Fathurrozaq mán. So the work we discuss is about the summary of Fathurrozaq mán, called Hida yat al-Rah mán. In his age, Hambali chose to summarize Fathurrozaq mán rather to arrange his own Quran translation. He has a reason, obviously. One of them is because he had catched a similar situation between what he faced and Kiai Soleh Darat faced in terms of dakwah activities in colonial Indonesia. So, to explain what situation Hambali means and what actually Hambali desires through his Hida yat al-Rah mán, we will explain what context. The context of Fathurrozaq mán as the mother of Hambali's work, and the context of Hida yat al-Rah mán. In the first context, to get a good picture of Fathurrozaq mán's milieu in terms of dakwah, we borrow some works of Multatuli, Makhafla, the letters of Kartini, just like Bu Ulia Fikriyati just now, and Pramudia Ananta Tur, Tetralogi Bumi Manusia, or Buru Quartet, because they have described well the feelings of the people in the close of 19th century. We can see from them how Indonesia in the age of Ampel is a very potential land for the Dutch colonial to do their business, especially in sugar company. In the context of sugar plantation, the Dutch colonial chose India before Indonesia, but unfortunately, it didn't work well in India. So the project was moved to Indonesia, and the dream comes true. Sugar plantation in Indonesia works great. By the time, even the Dutch East Indies was the biggest sugar exporter in the world, defeating Cuba. But everything changes, you know, when Prince Diponegoro, one of the influential person in the history of Indonesia, came up in their business. In 1825, the Diponegoro's movement, okay, sorry, we can see his picture in the share screen. He is Prince Diponegoro, and beside him is the sugar company in 1902. Okay, the Diponegoro's movement triggers a war called Diponegoro War, and accordingly it harms the Dutch company. We could see it obviously that after the war ended by 1860, their sugar production rose steadily and reached its peak in 1882 by, 4,800 percentage point. When the rebellion of ulama in Cilegon, Banten, one of district in Java, Indonesia, occurred in 1888, their production also fell slightly. The point is that the Dutch main business at the time relates closely to ulama movement, including their dakwah activities. Since then, the Dutch government decides to strictly oversee all activities of dakwah in Dutch East Indies by one of them appointing Sanak Horgrens to do the duty in 1889. Well, that's the picture of people of Cilegon which were arrested by the colonial government in 1888. Okay, continue to the context of social life of Fathurrozaq. The power of relation in Dutch East Indies was quite hierarchical. We can see it through the relation among the queen, the governor general, the resident, the assistant resident, the district officer, and people. People at the time are situated to work by food. And when they meet European or just their offspring, including colonial government officers in the street, they should bow to them. Then if you move to other fields, education, for example, we will catch the same story. Education inequality only occurs between the offspring of European and the children of a government native officer, while most people are left behind without any education. It is ironic. We can see it in the picture. We can see the inequality through these pictures between the people in the left up and the government officers and the colonial itself. They have a different in fashion. Okay, one thing we have to know as well is that only a few people have Islamic understanding. In the dawn of 20th century, the legitimation of ulama depends on pilgrimage to Mecca, while this was a dangerous journey. Therefore, people have not much access to Islamic knowledge because the rarity of ulama. The less ulama exists, the more people could not approach Islam. That's what set the context and the picture of Fathurrozaq. Then I will continue to the second milieu, that is the context of Hida yat al-Rah mān. Hida yat al-Rah mān was appeared when some religious organizations such as Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama had competed each other in da'wah, but none of them are using Quran translation or commentary. Hambali sees the gap. Hambali sees that gap and assumes that da'wah through Quran's translation is needed in around 1960. To make people understand what the meaning of Quran as he read in his introduction. At the same time, that's the similar point between Fathurrozaq Mán's contact and Hida yat al-Rah mān to complete da'wah. And that is one of the reasons that makes Hambali to summarize Fathurrozaq Mán. We could say here that through retinting the work in a specific context, we could recall the work's function to solve a similar obstacle. Hambali had seen a similar condition between what said between Kiai Soleh Darat faced and what he faced. So he chose to summarize Soleh Darat's work and translate the Quran. Okay, before I close my talk and later will be continued by my friend, my partner Fathurrozaq, let me show you how Hambali translated the Quran and summarized Fathurrozaq Mán. In Al-Baqarah 2:11, he writes, "Wa idza qila lahum la tufsidu fil ardi qalu innama nahnu muslihun." Dene lakune munafik ing nalika dituturi dening Kanjeng Nabi utawa mukmin mengkene pituture, "He kawulane Allah, aja padha gawe rusak sira kabeh ana ing dalem bumine Allah kelawan gawe kekufuran lan nyegah maring wong kang mlebu agama Islam." Nuli jawab mengkene, "He mukmin, angking pestine ingsun kabeh iku gawe kepatutan ana ing iku bumine Allah, ora ana ingsun kabeh iku kok gawe kerusakan. Lan ingsun gawe rejo iku bumi lan rame, lan ingsun jembarake dedalane pengupa jiwa supaya dadi rejo iku donya lan yo rame." Iki rupane jawabe wong munafik kabeh nuli nolak Allah Subhanahu wa taala ing pengucape munafik kelawan pengendikan ala innahum al-ayah. In English, we can say that this is the way the insincere man munafik deal with when they gain guidance from prophet on the believer. "O worshipper of God, do not make mischief on the earth by means of disobedience and obstruction against people who happen to be Muslim. They say, we are only ones that put things right on the earth of God. We do not make mischief. Our mission is merely to make peace and expand road to get a job, and the world will be progressive and prosperous." That is the answer, so that God denies the saying and took the subsequent verse. Well, we can understand there how Hambali in Al-Baqarah 2:11 discuss about munafik and satirize the government. Okay, that's all. To know further regarding his work and method in translating the Quran, my partner will explain for us. Thank you very much, and I'll be glad to answer your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Muhammad Saifullah, Global Quran. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Let me start my session. First, I will show the structure of Hida yat al-Rah mān, of course. And the second point of my presentation is how Hambali maintaining Qasasul Quran, or Quranic story, why he preferred to elaborate it extensively. And then we will discern how his pattern of translation look like, why he chooses that method. First of all, Hambali stated in his introduction that this book is a summary of Kiai Soleh Darat Fathurrozaq Mán fi Tarjamah Tafsir Kalam Malikudayan, as Muhammad Saifullah said. Furthermore, we find that he also said what is not exactly found in the book of Hida Rahman. Okay, in terms of publishing, Kiai Soleh Hida Rahman font are not so user-friendly as Mbak Olia presenting. On the other hand, Hambali's book had a better printing technique and layout. For ordinary people, Hida yat al-Rah mān is more understandable. Besides of book format factor, the ordinary people can fully understand tafsir, of course, which is specifically proposed to certain students that we call santri. Additionally, the layout which locates the translation next to the original text helps ordinary people to read the translation and learn Arabic simultaneously. Basically, Hida yat al-Rah mān is set equivalent to the text of Quran. However, in several parts, Hambali provides elaboration to obtain further understandable meaning for ordinary people. It is frequently marked by the addition of opening and closing brackets. Nevertheless, it also appears without sign. Yeah. The most frequent amplification dealing with dhamir or pronoun, that he mostly repeats the name or subject or object. Although it is written with dhamir in the text of the Quran. This case can be easily found even in the majority verses. The following is an example. Okay. Okay. As an example, the Domer case is Muhammad Hambali often write this translation. So the disbeliever will never believe because Allah ini wa idza qila lahum aminu kama amana an-nasu qalu okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Innal ladzina kafaru sawa'un 'alaihim a anzartahum am lam tundirhum la yu'minun, in the verses 6. Hambali translation is always amplification. He elaborates the dhamir with the subject itself. So the disbeliever will never believe because Allah has set a seal on the heart of the disbeliever. So the pronoun is we can call that redundant, but it can be seen how this characteristic is built from routine Sorokan teaching or the traditional processes of reciting the book. In these processes, the student will be ordered to explain in detail the content and the grammatical structure of each word using the rules of Nahwu and Sarf. In this case, the role of dhamir should be described precisely. Hambali's elaboration of each pronoun will help ordinary people who are not familiar with pronoun. Santri milieu surrounding Hambali's life affect his writing structure, resembling the condition of Kiai reading translation amid his student. The method of Sorogan in this writing is inherently more vivid than in Hida yat al-Rah mān. Okay, even though Hida yat al-Rah mān elaborates every passage extensively, Hambali chose to highlight Qasasul Quran more than the other. For example, in verse 30 to 38, concerning to the story of Prophet Adam, his elaboration is more varied. He even refers to Abu Madian al-Tilmisani and Abu Abbas, who were the teacher of Ibn al-Arabi. In verse 50, he summarizes from Hida yat al-Rah mān's story of Moses to a mare of Jibril that makes horse of Pharaoh troops brief enough to go into the sea. This is long enough for the elaboration. Then other verse, the Qasasul Quran get a significant point in Hambali's view. In this point, we can see that extensive storytelling for Hambali is a significant aspect to interest people of Jawa, who historically has the sentiment in narrative approach, such as we know with Wayang and Mahabharata and the other. On the other hand, as Mbak Ulia says, Hambali also trying to emphasize normative message about monotheism to the Javanese people that previously adhered to dynamism and animism. With the story of Sulaiman. Okay. Regarding the language expression used by Hambali, as what Catherine said in advance in her letter, the Javanese side, also called the vernacularization, seems to be vividly striking. The expressive and andap asor or humble Javanese is obvious in Hambali's translation. This case can be found in the first narrative with the dialogue. An example in verse 55, the dialogue of Bani Israel, rejection of dakwah of their prophet. In there, Hambali translate lan ilingo maneh nalika ngucap sira kabeh marang Nabi Musa, kawula sedaya mboten ngandel dhateng jenengan hingga yen sampun ningali kawula ing Allah kelayan ngedeng terang blekeripun. Translating the text above from the Javanese to Indonesian, the author recognizes unable to fully comprehend the language still used. As Kartini stated, the Javanese text has a deep favor and expression. Looking at the context of the verse, it must present the arrogance of Bani Israel to their prophet, to the Moses. However, it's highly possible that Hambali drew a simple analogy about toto kromo, about manners of the people to their prophet. In Javanese ethic, subordinates are obligated to respect superiors since kingdom period, especially during colonial era. Okay. Therefore, Multatuli drew an analogy of the rule of the region at the time to a little king controlling a certain area who must deposit and report the corpse to the resident. Thus, the hierarchy of social class is plainly obvious by the use of Kromo Inggil. And included in Hida yat al-Rah mān, the description of the caste division seems obvious when Hambali translated the dialogue between Prophet Musa and his people. Okay, Hambali is influenced by Javanese ethic regarding the gentle in speaking to those who are considered more noble. As for the Quran, there is no linguistic hierarchy for followers to prophet or even servant to God. But Hambali with Javanese characters translate it distinctively and distinguish the nuance appearing in the Quran. Hambali creates new nuance because the high value adhered to first, the point of Hambali is a summary. First is the Qasasul Quran. He approaches and and make it a long elaboration. And second is the Chroma Injil in presenting the dialogue about the subordinates and the noble. It's not enough for me. Thank you.